Hi there, my name is Davis Tierney. I'm the Director of Interpretation here at the Frontier Culture Museum, and I'm here to talk to you about one of the other elements that fights in Crockett's Western Battalion, and that is Major George Slaughter's Corps of Indian Fighters. Now, as their name suggests, this is a unit that is formed out of men in Culpeper County, Virginia, to fight on the frontier against Virginia's various and sundry Indian enemies, who are, at this point, allies of King George and Great Britain. Their equipment, the way they fight, etc., is going to reflect the people that they are fighting against, the fighting styles that they are encountering. Now, when they leave Culpeper initially, the way that they look is actually pretty similar to the regular members of Crockett's battalion that you saw earlier. We're wearing the same pants, these gaitered trousers, or just overalls, as some people say in the period. We know that Slaughter's had some of these pants because one of their men is captured when the little strap that runs under his shoe off these pants caught a root, causing him to trip, be overtaken by a group of Indian warriors. Outside of that, it's us having to fill in a lot of blanks. Now, we know there are certain things that state troops generally use, so things like the hunting shirt tend to be a really good bet for soldiers who are not well equipped. We don't have any hard evidence of these men being issued things like waistcoats, coats, etc. So it's very likely they're supplementing with a lot of stuff from home. Maybe hunting shirts from home, waistcoats from home, shoes from home, hats from home. This hat here is only interesting, really, because it's got a bucktail in it. Now, bucktails like this are something that a lot of men on the frontier wear as a way to show sort of how politically Whiggish they are. This is Whig, W-H-I-G. That's the political party that tends to be most sympathetic towards the rebel cause, towards the patriot cause. So this is a way of saying that I really don't like King George. I am all about independence all day, every day. And we know that other units coming out of Culpeper are wearing similar things. Now, these guys are going to find, as they serve on the frontier for an incredibly extended period, with really bad supply lines, that their equipment is going to deteriorate rapidly. And because of that, they're going to have to make a couple changes to how they equip themselves using whatever is at hand. Hi folks, I'm back and I look a little bit different than I did before. Whereas before I was in a much more conventional European style military dress, what I'm wearing now is what would have been referred to in the period as Indian dress. I've incorporated bits and pieces of typically Native American garments into what I'm wearing. And the reason that Slaughter's battalion does this is because their regular uniforms are just getting torn to shreds. Being out on the frontier, campaigning hard, their stuff just does not last and they cannot get properly resupplied. So they have to make do with what's available. And guess what's available on the frontier? Native trade goods. Things like Stroud cloth. This cloth you see my breechcloth and leggings are made out of, identifiable by that white stripe from where it was dyed. Now, what you see here with the breechcloth and leggings is the Native American solution to pants. Whereas I had that pair of gaitered trousers on before that are supposed to protect my legs from underbrush and junk, I've replaced those with leggings to perform the same basic task. Similar to the ones you saw Sam wearing earlier, the primary difference being mine are decorated a little bit more like normal native leggings. Mine are bound with some finger-woven garters here, again, something we're getting out of those native trade stores. And the cloth itself is a native trade cloth. As to why on earth I would dispense with pants entirely and go with a breechcloth, which, for your information, is basically just a long rectangular piece of cloth that you wear between the legs, so it does cover everything up, believe it or not. And the reason I'm wearing this is, one, because my pants are dead and I can't get anything else. Two, it's actually really comfortable. You never have to worry about blowing out a seam on your pants when there is no seam. It's just literally a cloth rectangle. On my feet, I've got moccasins on. This is also something that we're going to get from the natives. We're going to take brain tan buckskin that's plenty available out in the frontier and make it into these moccasins because they're so easy to produce. You don't need a professional shoemaker to make moccasins. If you have a little bit of instruction and a couple hours on your hands, you can get a pair out pretty quickly. So this is something that the men can make for themselves fairly easily with the stuff that's available to them. I'm not dressed entirely in native garb, however. You'll notice I'm still wearing my hunting shirt. I'm still wearing that bucktail in my hat to indicate whose side I'm on. There are examples of patriot men not wearing these types of things and deliberately trying to look as native as possible to attempt to fool enemy warriors. But in my situation where I'm fighting with a large number of my buddies, it makes a little bit more sense for me to be identifiable to avoid friendly fire situations and the like. And finally, I'm just wearing my waistcoat because it's chilly outside. I'm already not wearing pants. The European dress conventions have gone out the window. at that point, there's no real strong social reason to wear this thing. It's just cold. So I've got mine on right now because I'm a little bit chilly. So all this just goes to show that these guys are having to make do with what is available when they're out on the frontier and cannot get resupply. Hi folks, we're back, and we're just going to talk about some of the really basic equipment that we're pretty sure troops like Slaughter's Corps carried on campaign. Now, my backpack system is a little bit different from what you saw Sam carrying. His was a normal 2-strap knapsack. You wear it basically like your kid wears a backpack to school. What I've got here is a single strap tump line. So this right here allows me to roll all of my junk up inside my blanket. So whereas Sam had the backpack and the tump line just for the blanket, I am exclusively using that tump line to carry all of my stuff rolled up inside the blanket. So if we unroll here, I've got a couple little things, nothing huge. An extra shirt, a nice warm hat, some mittens, things of that nature. You can stash food in here, you can stash extra ammunition in here, whatever you need to carry. Now this way of carrying your stuff is a very Native American mode of campaigning. They will carry just about everything in one big blanket roll or tump line. And so, given that these guys are adopting other elements of native warfighting, this seems like a fairly safe bet for how they'd lug their stuff around in the field. I've also got here a tomahawk. This is honestly more a camp tool than it is a close quarters weapon. You can hit people with it, obviously. But what happens more often? Having to find a dry place to sleep or having to hit somebody in the head? Probably thing A. What happens more often? Having to get firewood or hit somebody in the head? Again, probably thing A. So this is more honestly useful as a camp tool for collecting firewood, building shelter, things of that nature, than it is in a fight. That's especially true because I can actually use my firearm as a close quarters weapon as well, which Sam can't. And that is because this is a musket. And what makes this a musket as opposed to his rifle is, one, that it has a smooth bore barrel. We'll get into why that's important later. And two, because it is capable of attaching a bayonet to the end of the gun. So I've got my bayonet right here. It's going to attach over the muzzle like so, giving me, in essence, a very long spear and a gun. I don't need the tomahawk. I got this long pointy thing instead. Now, this gun is a French musket. These guys may have had French muskets like many of the American troops late in the Revolution. They may have also had Spanish muskets shipped up from New Orleans, which was supplying a large portion of these frontier troops. Moving along, we've got a tin cartridge box. You saw Sam had a leather one. What's the difference? Well, this is just a different way of making something when you're an army in desperate need of supplies. The American government is having a hard time sourcing adequate leather, so sometimes what they'll do is make cartridge boxes out of tin like this. The upside to this thing is that it's actually very waterproof, so it's great for keeping your powder dry. The downside, I've got fairly small hands, and you can see my hand barely fits inside this thing. So fishing cartridges out of this quickly is a little bit of a pain in the neck as compared to a normal leather cartridge box. Finally, I got my canteen. The only difference between mine and the one you saw Sam with earlier is that mine is of a slightly different construction, relying on staves, kind of like a barrel, that are all banded together. Otherwise, it's a thing to hold my water in.
Hello, my name is Travis Daniel, and I'm an interpreter here at the Frontier Culture Museum. And I'm here today to tell you about the militia that served with Crockett's Western Battalion. Now, it was expected during the entirety of the colonial period that every man between 16 and 60 would serve in their local militia. This meant that they were expected to have a certain amount of military-style equipment. They were expected to come out once a month and train. And they were expected to help defend the colonies against localized threats. However, during the American Revolution, they would find themselves up against a far greater foe, one of the great powers of the world, and their efforts to concentrate native attacks on the western frontier. Now, during Crockett's time, he would pick up a large amount of militia to help fill his ranks. And while these men were not the greatest soldiers in the world, they would help Crockett serve throughout the rest of the war. Now, a little bit about what I'm wearing. I obviously look quite a bit different than some of the other people you've seen. And that's because I'm wearing my everyday common civilian clothing. This is not issued by the military. This is my own clothes. Now, I'm wearing basically the 18th century version of a three-piece suit. I've got my cocked hat with the brim down to help protect my eyes from the sun. And I'm wearing Indian style leggings to help protect my legs as I move through the woods. Alright, so here we have some of the equipment that I personally have as a militiaman. To start off with, I have my wallet. Now you may have noticed that some of the soldiers had packs. They had a lot of stuff in them. They had straps. They looked like backpacks. This is a simple sack with a slit in it. This is what I'm going to throw all my personal effects in and sling it over my shoulder. It really doesn't get any more simple than that. And to kind of point out some things that I'm going to try to help make my service as comfortable as possible, I have this pipe and tobacco, very common for an 18th century man, especially one from Virginia. Many of the soldiers would have also had it, but these are our small creature comforts to help make the service a bit more bearable. Now I also have this wool blanket. This is the only thing I have to protect myself against the elements. Even though it's going to do okay when it's cold and when it's wet, there's going to be plenty of miserable nights. Now let's talk a little bit about the military style equipment that the militia had with them. Here I have what is called a Fowler. It is a smooth bore flintlock, just like Davis's Charleville. As a member of the militia, it should be able to fit a bayonet. Mine does not. Here I have a tomahawk as my edged weapon for service. I should have a bayonet. Obviously I do not. Over here I have a shot pouch which would hold loose lead balls, and a powder horn and a measure which would hold my gunpowder. I should have pre-rolled cartridges, but I do not. And this is because I'm in blatant violation of the militia laws. Now during the colonial period, at certain times, this gun and this tomahawk would be acceptable. During the Revolutionary War, however, they would not. And finally, as with all soldiers, I need to hydrate. I have a simple cheese box canteen just like Sam's.
Well, here you have it. These are the uniforms and equipment that you would have expected to see for Crockett's Western Battalion once they made it to the frontier in 1781. We have the full uniform for the battalion, the regulars of the battalion, along with their add-ons from George Slaughter's Corps of Indian Fighters and the militia that joined them on the frontier. We hope that this has been an enjoyable video, and if you have any questions or curiosities, we'll hope you come visit us here at the Frontier Culture Museum. Until then, have a good day.